this one, and I just finished watching Grand Slam, AEW Grand Slam Mexico. Kind of want to do a video about that as well, so I'm kind of under the pump here, so I want to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals and the Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions for the 2024-2025 season, winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. And as I mentioned in my last video, with Florida going back-to-back, it increasingly looks like with Vegas we were very fortunate to strike while the iron was hot there, because the Panthers have legitimately looked like the best hockey team. Like, well, obviously they won the Stanley Cup, so obviously they're the best hockey team, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they've looked so good, so complete. And they don't really have any weaknesses in their game, and I don't want to say like we were lucky, because luck plays a role in every Stanley Cup final. You know, the healthiest team, the extra bounces here and there, but we were fortunate with Kachuk's injury and then how well we were playing in Vegas that we were able to get that 2023 Cup, because Florida's going to be right back in the mix next season. They have the second best odds to win the Stanley Cup next year. Funny enough, the team with the best odds to win the Stanley Cup next year is the Edmonton Oilers, who just lost, but we'll see. The odds of both of these teams going back to back and meeting up in the Stanley Cup Finals is extremely unlikely and improbable. And I have to be honest here, after Game 1 and then Game 2, those two back-to-back games, both them going overtime, both them being one-goal games, I really felt like these two teams were super evenly matched, and in my mind at that point it seemed like this is a series that was going to go the distance. It was going to go 7 games, which obviously does not end up happening here. But you have Game 1, Game 2, in both games the teams look super close. But then that Game 3 happens, and that Game 3 was legitimately one of the worst, you know what sort of shows I've seen in a long time. Well, actually probably since 2023, because Vegas versus Florida in the final 2 years ago, we actually had a big game like that, except for in that game it was Florida committing all the penalties. In this game it was Florida drawing all the penalties. So they might have learned that little trick there from us. But that was just an ugly game. It got to the point at the end there in that third period where the Oilers, they weren't even trying to play hockey anymore. They were just trying to hit guys and cause some pain, and that was an ugly game. And I actually thought at that moment, my prediction was after that game happened, I thought Florida was going to just go boom boom, win the next 2 and finish it. Like, I thought that at that point Edmonton was rattled. I thought that they were going to, be too in their head, too emotional, and they wouldn't be able to get back into the series. That was my prediction. But then you had that Game 4, which, even though early it looked like that would be the case, Florida goes up 3-0 in the first period. Edmonton comes back, they get 3. Game goes to overtime, and then I believe Leon Draisaitl gets his only goal of the playoffs in that overtime period there to win that game. And so then I'm thinking, okay, well, the Oilers, they bounce back, and they kind of got that. I thought that they would look worse worse than they had. But then game 5 is all Florida, and then game 6 is all Florida again. 5 goals in both those games. And the problem as well is, and the Oilers players even pointed this out, they were going down 2 goals in the first period basically every game. Like, the Edmonton Oilers were always on the back foot. They were always having to push for the comeback. And even in the games they won, it never felt like they were in control, especially early on. And I saw this stat, let me try and find it here. So to give credit where credit is due, this is a tweet from Johnny Lazarus at JLazzy23, and he says, the Florida Panthers may have shut down Connor McDavid, but there needs to be more credit given to them than there should be a knock on McDavid. Over the past 2 playoffs versus Florida, McDavid 4 goals in 13 games, Kucherov 0 goals in 10 games, Matthews 1 goal in 7 games, Pasternak 1 goal in 6 games, and Panarin 1 goal in 6 games. And then somebody pointed out as well, Draisaitl 4 games in 13 games, Nylander 5 goals in 12 games. It's just crazy. Like, the Panthers literally do not have a weakness. I know there's been a lot of talk, because if you look at, so it's Florida Panthers, then it was Vegas, and then it was Tampa before that. I know I'm missing somebody in the middle there. Who am I missing? I'm missing, I think the COVID years. Who am I missing? Florida, Vegas, Colorado. Yeah, Colorado. And then you had the Tampa Bay little dynasty. And I know there's been some conversations about this, but Tampa, Florida, Vegas, all of those are no income tax states, and there's a lot to be said about that, and what should be done about that, if anything can be done about that, and also specifically the USD thing as well, but in comparison to Canada. One thing as well that that I thought was interesting, I didn't realize how important Zach Hyman was to this Edmonton Oilers team. He brought that physicality that nobody else on the roster really seems to have, because with Evander Kane, and it's well documented, I dislike Evander Kane, but I'm going to try to make this statement objectively. Hyman is physical, strong, tough, gritty, but he's clean about it, he's smart about it, whereas Evander Kane gets emotional, and he gets reactive, he'll high stick people, he'll, do all that stuff, he'll end up in the penalty box. Whereas Hyman doesn't end up in the penalty box. That's the difference with Hyman being injured in this final series, especially against the Panthers, who are a physical team, they're a heavy team. No, it just didn't work, and again, you were just running McDavid and Draisaitl together over and over again, which I've said multiple times will not work in the finals. It did not work last year, it did not work this year, and even Connor McDavid in his post-game interview said, they just keep trying the same things over and over, and it's not working. And it comes back to coaching. You're not investing in goaltending. You're not investing in depth. And you need to break up McDavid and Draisaitl. And obviously, Nugent Hopkins wasn't 100%. Hyman was injured, so you don't have as much flexibility. But still, it wasn't working. And they're talking about an extension. McDavid will probably get a raise of 4 or 5 million, something like that. I don't. There's all this talk like, oh, where's McDavid gonna go? Is he gonna leave Edmonton? I don't think he'll leave Edmonton. I think it's gonna be increasingly more difficult for them to win a Stanley Cup with him, especially because they keep going all in on this veteran talent. I saw like your top scoring winger, or the most goals for a winger through the playoffs. The Edmonton Oilers was Corey Perry. Corey Perry's 40 years old. The youngest player on the roster is 25. Next season, Draisaitl will be 30. McDavid will be 30. Ekholm will be 36. And Nugent Hopkins will be 33. So this is a team that's not getting any younger. And from what I understand, I'm not an expert on this. I'm barely an expert on my own team's pipeline. But I don't believe that the Edmonton Oilers really have that good of a prospect pipeline on the way up, coming up through the minor leagues. I don't know if they have that many good draft picks or maybe tradable assets. I don't know. Just because, like in their players, you have a lot of older guys. Skinner, Arvidsson, Henry, Kane, Brown. I don't think any of those guys are going to get you very many good picks or young prospects, but we'll see. But they're in an interesting spot. But again, credit to this Panthers team. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations, maybe over the next this off season, kind of comparing and contrasting that Tampa Bay Lightning team that won all those Stanley Cups back to back to back, and this Florida Panthers team, and kind of comparing and contrasting them. It's hard to say which team is better, especially because I don't believe in asterisks for the most part, but there's always going to be that comment with the Tampa Bay run about the LTIR and all that other stuff, and the Panthers do not have that same sort of thing about them. They're the best offensive team, they're the best defensive team, they're the best special teams team, and they don't really seem to make that many mistakes. And one thing is, it seemed like the mistakes they were making, and particularly in 2023 against Vegas, was they were a heavy physical team, but when the other team would get heavy and physical back, like Vegas did in that final, it would rattle them, and then they would commit dumb penalties, because Florida got a lot of penalty minutes in that Stanley Cup final against Vegas. Whereas since that series, it seems like they know how to use their physicality, play to that line, get the other team to retaliate, make mistakes, do something stupid, but they don't react, they don't retaliate, like we saw in that game 3. But yeah, you just see like they were out skating them, they were dump and chase, and it seemed like Edmonton really wouldn't even try to stop them. They just couldn't keep up with Florida, and then it seemed like Edmonton wasn't adjusting their game plan to what Florida was shutting down. And that's not always the easiest thing, because your game plan is what got you to the finals in the first place. But if it's not working, you have to adjust, and the best coaches do adjust. And I think, honestly, that was the difference. It wasn't the only difference, but that was the big difference, was coaching, and honestly goaltending. a steady hand, a reliable netminder in Florida that they didn't have to worry about him making dumb mistakes. They didn't have to, double check, triple check. They didn't have to adjust their game plan to try and stop shots from getting through to them. They were comfortable playing their game in front of their goalie. Because Florida had a reliable goalie. And I don't think Edmonton had that same comfort with who was in their net. It'll be interesting to see. Overall, it was a pretty good Stanley Cup final. Like I said, the first two games for me were the best in the series. They were the most exciting. Everything outside of that felt... I guess that game 4 wasn't too bad, but it just felt a little bit too lopsided. Because even in the game 4, even though it went to overtime, it was like Florida scored 3, then Edmonton scored 3, whereas I felt like games 1 and 2 was a bit more back and forth, which, if I'm in neutral, that's what I want to see. But then after game 4, games 5 and 6, I was kind of just wasn't that interested because they were lopsided, and as a neutral, I don't like watching lopsided games. But the first two games in this series I thought were quite exciting. I watched them both all the way through, and very exciting stuff there. And then the wheels just sort of fell off as things went on. Brad Marchand winning a Stanley Cup with a team that is not the Boston Bruins is so weird. Yeah, I'm still not used to not seeing him in a Boston Bruins jersey. Let me pull up this picture of him here. Well, yeah, he just looks so weird in that Panthers jersey, man. Like, it just doesn't look right. Like, I'm happy for him getting another cup, like, and building a sort of a legacy outside of Boston is cool. But it's been 14 years since his last one. I didn't realize it's been that long. But yeah, and the thing is too, is Marchand was instrumental in them winning. Like he was constantly just making the right plays, putting in work. And I think a lot of fans have kind of come around on Marchand a little bit in recent years, maybe him leaving Boston up with that. And Sam Bennett is your Conn Smythe winner, which I know some people are going to feel a certain way about that. I know Sam Bennett's not very popular outside of Florida. It's going to be really funny. I saw comments because Sam Bennett he's a free agent. I don't know if he's unrestricted or restricted. There's been some rumors about different places that he might go. I saw some funny comments about, like, if Sam Bennett goes to a different team, Florida fans are going to start changing their tune about him real quick, and whoever he goes to, their fans are going to be going back and deleting some old comments, some old tweets, whatever else. But anyways, congratulations to the Florida Panthers. We will see. Very interesting next year. The Stanley Cup stays out of Canada yet again. And my prediction, I made this prediction like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, that it is going to be the Winnipeg Jets who finally bring a Stanley Cup to Canada. That prediction remains on track. I firmly